Welcome to the Livin'Sky podcast, a show about raising connected, resilient kids in a world that often forgets what they need most. I'm Lena Livin'Sky, a pediatric speech-language pathologist, holistic feeding specialist, and a mom, here to help you understand your child's body, behavior, and biology in a whole new way. Each episode brings you simple, practical tools to support healthy eating, development, and family connection without the overwhelm. Thanks for listening. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Livin'Sky podcast. Today's episode dives into a game-changing topic that touches so many parts of our children's lives and health, posture. And I promise it's more relevant to feeding and overall development than you might realize. Joining us is the incredible Kasia Galica. She's a certified strength and coordination specialist, the founder of Move with Kasia, and a credentialed expert in postural restoration. With over a decade of experience in movement coaching, Kasia's journey has taken her from yoga and strength training into the world of postural restoration. She brings both science and ease to movement beyond just stretching, focusing on restoring functional alignment through breath, tissue training, and natural movement. Today, we will unpack how posture affects everything: feeding, chewing, speech, breathing, and so much more. What postural restoration truly means and why it matters for your child's feeding journey. The best activities and habits to support developing posture, plus what to watch out for, tips on choosing footwear that encourages healthy posture, and practical advice for moms to support their posture during pregnancy and postpartum transitions. Whether you're an overwhelmed parent trying to manage picky eating or a professional curious about supporting children through this whole child perspective, this episode will give you simple, powerful tools to help your child and you move and eat more joyfully. Let's get started. Kasia, welcome.
Thank you. Wow, what an introduction. That sounds really fun, and I'm excited to be here.
Oh, me too. We have so much to talk about because I think posture is not often discussed when it comes to health. And I think it needs to be, right? It's very
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for parents who might not be familiar, can you explain what posture restoration is and why it's something we should pay attention to in our kids and in ourselves?
Right. Yeah. I think we have to start with the word posture itself. So, the Postural Restoration Institute is a place that I go to study and understand and learn about the body, the neurology, physiology, and how the body works in order to guide my clients and the people that I work with towards improving their movement, improving their airflow, improving their quality of life. But the word posture itself is kind of the big thing that I think most individuals struggle with because anytime someone finds out that I'm a postural restoration specialist, they do what? Sit up straight, pull their shoulder blades
Yeah.
back, almost like out of fear. It's like, oh no, you're judging me. And I probably got terrible posture. And that's usually what I hear when people say it. And so it's really important to define that posture as we know it, as it's been used, is this kind of nebulous concept. And there's tools and there's clothing now that comes out where you see Taylor Swift wearing this posture correcting bra that's pulling her shoulder blades back and lifting up her chest. And we're confused. We're confused about what posture is, and posture is dynamic. It's not static. It's not something that you hold. It holds you. It is your essence. It is your voice. It is your vision. It is your hearing. It is your diaphragm and pelvis. It's whether you're standing on grass or ground or you're standing in heels. Like all of those things are part of how you can define posture. And so when we say that posture matters, it's basically because we're saying your breath, your neurology matters. And so that's what the
Mm-hmm.
Institute has taught me and helped me guide my clients as a personal trainer, by the way. So I'm not a clinician, but there's
Mm-hmm.
clinicians. Most of my mentors are physical therapists, chiropractors. They run the gamut of studying and learning and applying postural restoration techniques and the basic tenets of PRI in their existing practices to help continue to guide people towards better movement, better.
And this is so connected with everything: talking, eating, breathing. And whenever anything's out of alignment in our body, that's going to affect how our kids grow up and how they develop. So this is so important.
Absolutely. And the confusion around posture is really important because
It
we're
is.
getting a lot of misinformation. And it started a long time ago, and we don't know who did it. But even my mother, in Poland, said that when she went to nursing school, they would put broomsticks behind their back, behind their shoulders to hold them to sit up straight like this. And again,
Yeah.
what does this posture do? It leads to a rib flare and a chin tuck and a closed airway, shoulder blades back, very rigid. Holding our bodies rigidly for what purpose leads to adaptation that might lead to what looks like better posture. I always got
Right.
a lot of compliments for having really good posture when I was younger because I was basically stuck up straight, but I was snoring and I had airway issues and I had back
Mm-hmm.
pain. I ended up with a lot of developmental issues because of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a chicken and the egg conversation. So I kind of really want to
Right.
enforce that what I want to share today is a lot more of having people question, what do you think posture is first before we talk about what is important about it?
Right.
Because it's just us and we've stuck this label on it. And then all of a sudden we have this understanding that where did it come from? What we think
Right.
posture is.
Right. And I mean, I clearly thought that too growing up because that's what I've heard. And I also grew up in Poland. So I wonder if that's just like what you hear around there. But I think it's everywhere. Even when I was in SLP school, we talk about posture when it comes to safe eating, and they want the child at 90 degrees. Right. And that's not necessarily the safest posture. It has to be adaptable to the child and where they are, and making sure they're not laying back. That's not safe, but it doesn't mean it's 90 degrees. It's kind of finding that safe postural spot for them so they can swallow safely. But yeah, I was definitely taught 90 degrees, get them as close to that as possible. And I don't know, what do you think? Is that correct? Or how can we ensure that our children's postures are correct when they're eating so they can swallow safely?
Okay. So first I have to admit that I'm not the specialist in terms of the pediatric specialization here. We've got an amazing Lisa Mangino does an entire human evolution course where she kind of talks through
Mm,
all of these things. So
okay.
I want to highlight that because I work with adults. Although
Hmm.
I've helped do some restoration work with children, the specialty that I have is a lot more corrective. It's kind of like, okay, if you were W sitting as a kid, which I was, and you had malocclusion as a kid and you had teeth pulled out, and now you're 37 years old, I can help restore some of that posture, which is kind of where I want to highlight here is that we can make small adjustments, but perfect is never something that we're trying to achieve. I don't blame my mother for not knowing certain things about posture when she was raising me or the way that things developed for me. There's no perfect like you're insinuating here.
Hmm.
There are principles and there's
Hmm.
frameworks, right? Breathing, talking, chewing is super important. How a child chews. Are they staring at a screen? Are
Hmm.
they chin tucked looking downwards at a device that's triggering their brain to think something that's not happening? These are kind of the important principles that I think I love to highlight because of how relevant and important they are today. So, a lot of the ways that maybe we didn't have these tools that kind of distract normal
Yeah.
behaviors, moms and dads and kids are facing today.
Yeah.
And instead of focusing on the super, let's say, nuanced positioning question, it's are we all sitting down, chewing, having a conversation, and eating slowly?
It's a
Because
very good point.
Because I can't assess every child or I'm not assessing everyone, but I also don't think that we need to nitpick excessively. I think that as long as we have these principles of what is eating for? What is eating time for? And
Mhm.
how do we do that together? Everything starts slowing down versus, oh, I got to make sure my kid's sitting in an appropriate chair in some certain
Right.
way. It's like we'll find our ways a lot easier with a lot more variety and ease when we're doing it in very intentional and thoughtful ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And that also promotes connection, which is so important for picky eaters because a lot of times that's lost. And then children are disconnected and they're not focusing on what they're doing. And perhaps there's some fear that creeps in because they're not really connecting with not only what they're doing, but also the people they're eating with. So I think it's all, and I don't want to use this word again, but it's all very much connected. Like if the connection is lost, it's going to affect the whole child.
We should keep
Yeah.
using that word. I love it. I love
Yeah.
it too, that it's all connected, which makes it a little bit less scary when you think of what variables you can change, because we can learn about how everything's connected and then see the results and then know that there's still other things that we can play with. But I love that you talked about picky eating and what is a signal of picky eating, or how does that look like, or what does that look like in terms of what's happening. You can note it a lot more when you're already in connection.
Yes.
And relating back to posture, I can imagine, again, whether it's culturally, you and I have similar upbringing,
Yes.
or in general, I believe that some of that sit up straight and pull the shoulder blades back comes from the military, I assume.
Hmm.
But yeah, growing up, I was told to sit up straight and,
Yes.
not slouch at the dinner table. I want to speak a little bit about that because children are small. We're different sizes as we grow, right? And the environment, however, stays the same. Kitchen tables are the same size, booths at the restaurant are the same size. And kids are not having their feet on the ground usually. They don't have contact with their feet on the ground. Their sit bones, maybe they're flopping around, so they end up perching forward or slouching. So really being aware of the fact that posture has a lot and or everything to do with your environment. And
Yeah.
so when we start nitpicking someone to consciously change their posture, we're not respecting that your posture is a reflection of the chair you're sitting in, whether your
Hmm.
feet are on the ground, what the light environment is, what the noise
Yes.
environment is, right? A loud, scary place might mean that we start cowering, like even subconsciously, kind of protecting ourselves, depending on how that audio sensory information comes in. And it's a lot more than just demanding somebody sit up straight in order to
Yeah.
not slouch.
Yeah.
So the environment dictates our nervous system, and our nervous system and our respiratory system are what dictate posture a lot more than just the musculoskeletal system. So I can pull my shoulder
Absolutely.
blades back, but if I can't breathe there, I'm probably not going to stay there for too long, or I'm going to
Yeah.
develop patterns around that to breathe.
I'm a huge believer that light is one of the most powerful medicines for our kids and for us. That's why I love Bon Charge. Their blue light blocking glasses, red light therapy devices, and many other products are designed to support your circadian rhythm and help your family sleep and feel better naturally. In our modern world of screens and artificial light, these small shifts make a big difference. Calmer evenings, deep sleep, better focus, and happier moods. I use Bon Charge products every single day, and even my son has his own pair of blue light blocking glasses for evening story time. You can check out all their products at boncharge.com and use code LENAL to save 15% off your purchase. And I love that you bring this to attention because I think when we have this connection piece, like we can really focus on observing our children and noticing things like that. Maybe their chair that you're picking for dinner every day is not appropriate for their size. Maybe they need to have a stool underneath so they can feel the ground and sit up a little bit more supported. Because when we don't feel supported, that can impact our feeding, that can impact our swallowing, our sensory. And I also love how you discuss the light environment and the noise environment. There's so much to unpack there, but that could be increasing that sensory feedback our kids have that negatively impacts their feeding. And because I focus on picky eating and in what I do, so that's why I always bring it back to that. But there's so many connections to make here and so much to think about. And I love what you just said. It's so important to be aware of that.
Yeah. I love that focus too, because it can cause a lot of stress for the whole family,
Yeah.
right? For moms to think, oh, it's doing something wrong and how do I fix it? And
Hmm.
maybe it doesn't need fixing in more rigidity.
Hmm.
Maybe it needs more fixing or more connection, like you mentioned, in just intention and noticing.
Yeah, and it could be a small thing because sometimes it could feel like I have to do so much. But it could be just dimming the lights. It could be just getting a stool for their feet. It could be a little small shift that can make a big difference.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
culturally and understanding how societally, if going out to eat or what it looks like, I mean, like I said, keep bringing it back to I know I was raised to sit up straight at the dinner
Mhm.
table, and I was very, very small or ended up with a certain type of posture. Well, yeah, it was not appropriate to sit in a, let's say, a squat position at the dinner
Mhm.
table or cross legged.
Yeah.
it's not appropriate. And today we're like, well, you're demanding a certain posture or you're demanding a certain way to be around this environment. It's already causing potentially a disconnect in what that child's current developmental stage is. I think it's relevant to me because when people want to know how I got here to doing postural restoration,
Yeah.
a lot of it has to do with I had to become a patient myself. I was a patient myself of the Postural Restoration Institute of my mentor. And a lot of it has helped me kind of unlayer my own story, my developmental story. And there are a lot of things that maybe could have been done as an intervention for me, but they weren't. And it's okay. And it's great because I'm so adaptable and we're so adaptable and your children are adaptable and they'll do this or they'll miss these milestones and it'll be okay and it'll still be okay. But I did not have my teeth break through until I was about 16 months old. My mom tells me that they had like advised her to cut my gums, and Polish moms are like, absolutely not. Polish
Yes.
moms don't do things. We don't. Polish moms have a certain way of like, nope, we're not doing that.
Yeah. Thank goodness for
And
that.
yeah, and so they didn't. And so there's a photo of me at like my first birthday standing with no teeth, right? Just straight gums. And that has implications for our development because there are milestones, there are teeth that come in, that there's crawling, and then when the canines come in, that's when we start to be able to alternate and shift in different ways. I didn't have that same developmental process, and many people might not, and it's okay. There are ways to then regain. Maybe there are tools that, whether it's children or them as adults, will then be able to use to help manage and continue to adapt to better movement. Because I've met and worked with people with congenitally missing canines, folks that have lost molars, that have lost certain teeth. And we have these amazing advances that we can do things about it, but it's still not the same as a living tooth. A living tooth is not an implant. It's not ceramic. It has certain give to it. And that's a great way to kind of segue into postural restoration is about sense. It's about sensing. And so sensing the chewing of your teeth, that compression, sensing your eyes and your teeth are kind of the threat sensors, the most important threat sensors in our body, and they end up dictating how our nervous system responds and eventually how our posture looks. So I hate to even say that because again, I don't want to reinforce this message, this erroneous kind of concept that your posture is how you look like at a snapshot of time. Your
Yeah.
posture is how you move, it's how you breathe. It's how you express yourself. It's how you sound, your eyes, your vocal cords. All of these things I could lump in there. But even the creator of Postural Restoration Institute, Ron Truska himself, he's like, I wouldn't have called it the Postural Restoration Institute. But he had no
Right.
choice. There's a lot of words that we use that have so much complexity to them. And my background's in health communication, so words are really valuable to me. And that's why I resonate so much with trying to make sure that folks get really curious about what they think posture is before they start thinking that it's something that they need to improve or attack with rigidity.
Yeah. Yeah, because it really that comes to mind so quickly. And I've never had heard it explained from this way, and I love how it brings everything so together because we rely on our senses for everything. So when we really tune into them, we can start to notice these patterns in our body and how we function and how we communicate and how we just, function in our everyday life. So that's fascinating to me. So how does a child's posture affect their ability to chew, swallow, and eat in general? And if we look at it from this like holistic lens of being more aware of what we do, how can we help our children, of course, depending on their age, but to make these little changes to improve their chewing, swallowing, and eating and talking in general?
Yeah. I'm always going to say it depends and
Of
always
course.
kind of guide people towards understanding that there might be some child that needs a certain intervention. That's why I keep pointing to the Postural Restoration Institute and all the clinicians who do specific pediatric support.
Hmm.
But I love continually thinking about it in this holistic way that how do we support this amazing thing that's happening? no one teaches us how to do, right? We just
Yeah.
learn to chew, swallow, and talk at the same time. What? Like we do that without choking, without drowning? Like who that's such an incredibly amazing thing, but we are designed to do that. And what happens when there's dysfunction there, we can look at these other things that we've been discussing. What's the environment like? What's the sensory environment like? What is the environment that's structurally involved, but also the family life, the light environment, that the food that's being eaten, right? Is the food that's being eaten thoughtful and energetic? And is it connected to what's happening in the season, right? You and I are
Hmm.
kind of in that holistic space of like, are we eating seasonally? Are we respecting natural laws? Can we have different ways that we can respect the energy and the timing, the circadian timing of when we're eating, et cetera? So these are obviously starting to go off into that realm of things. But posture restoration is really there. The Institute is really there for kind of unlayering some of these dysfunctional patterns that start to get complex, and these simple solutions don't help, right?
Yeah.
So maybe a child needs palatal expansion. Maybe there needs to be myofunctional support. I work with colleagues who do cranial sacral therapy on children and to help untorsion patterns. But I love that it's a yes and conversation.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm not a specialist in the age group here, but I have the vision of what it can turn into and how much can still be unlayered when you grow up.
Yeah.
And so the solutions and the interventions that happen during childhood, I guess the disclaimer I'll make is there's actually seems to be a lot happening in this space, right? I don't know about you, but I'm seeing a lot of braces on young children. I'm seeing a
Hmm.
lot of very quick dental interventions. I'm seeing a lot of palatal expansion and myofunctional therapies, which I think can be stupendous and amazing. And also, it seems very fast and very new. And so
Yeah.
I'm of the belief that when we're eating well and being connected and children are encouraged to chew and chew slowly and they're supported in the adults that are around them doing the same, that development is happening well on its own. And what are we doing when we're constantly trying to intervene in whatever God's plan is for that child with constant intervention? I also worry, like, what would I have felt like if when I was a little kid, like being shuffled between sessions of this therapy and that therapy and this therapy and then this device and that device? Like,
Yeah.
are we playing enough? Am I being told you're not good enough as you are? That maybe
Mm.
we want your smile to be bigger because it'll make you beautiful. I might have not developed this nose, not at all, had I had, certain postural correction and jaw correction and all of those things. And that would have been okay too. But I love to point out those little notes because I think the word posture causes a lot of alarm.
Yeah.
And I want that to be clear that there is no your posture is perfect, and I don't want it to be about an aesthetic is kind of what I'm pointing out
Yeah.
here, is
Yeah.
that your voice is getting created through your development, through your experiences, through the people in your
Yeah.
house. Your posture is being created through the family dynamic. And what are we doing when we're constantly trying to intervene to make sure it has some sort of perfect look and outcome? Can that cause more stress? I
Yeah.
think it could.
Yeah.
And I say that because I have 4 nibblings. I call them nibblings, nieces and nephews. And I was definitely like, "Oh, no, I know too much." And I'm, like, watching them grow, and I'm, like, making sure that I'm, like, wrestling them, and I'm, like, doing all these things, and I'm watching this one and going, "Oh, no, is he a mouth breather, and is he doing this?" And I'm, like, "Alright, there are things that we can do." And also, now they're teenagers and don't want anything to do with me, so
Well,
just
that
kidding.
that seems very appropriate.
Yeah, just kidding. They love me, but I had to come to that realization too that I didn't want that my relationship with them to be about correcting their posture.
Yeah. But I love that view because I think sometimes we're so fixated on making things better. and fixing things and just improving things and, kind of going towards that perfection. How can we help our kids from this
Optimizing.
way? Yeah. And sometimes, things are functioning fine just the way they are. Yeah, but it's yeah, I think there's a lot to talk about here, but I think finding that balance is a very important thing, and it takes time. But I also think it can take a little bit of pressure off the parents because sometimes when you are looking at your child from this lens of perfection, it can be very overwhelming.
And it's a
Yeah,
timing thing too,
yeah,
right? It's a timing thing. There's going to be children that miss developmental milestones, and there's going to be some that hit every one, and they still develop some sort of, let's say they get a cracked tooth, they get hit in the face with a baseball. I don't know,
hmm,
and then you'll have to go and get some remedy to kind of iron that alignment out in the future. And
yeah,
there are solutions for that, and there's always more to learn. But I suppose that is typically when folks come to me and ask for things, I'm also trying to mitigate
hmm,
the emergency factor of it, because I do this and see this with adults today in this state of optimizing that we're in, longevity expertises and all of these things that there's a certain sense of emergency and fear and it's based around fear. Whereas if we trust that if we're got the big basic blocks, right? To me, which is intentionality and connection and we can really start noticing things, but it's not getting it right per se.
yeah,
So
yeah. So a lot of it is about adaptability, like you mentioned a lot. And I think it's important. And I think that takes some pressure off too when we think about it that way.
yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to kids, and I know it's not your expertise, but I think this is a good question. When we want to support their development from this holistic lens, what kind of activities do you think are good for kids so that they can develop some good posture or correct body development, I feel like, or body awareness? Like, what are some activities that they can do to make them kind of grow in that way versus making it worse because they're kind of incorrect for kids at a certain age? Like, for me, I've learned that maybe jumping on a trampoline when you're a little too young might be too stressful for your child's joints. So, like, what are some activities they can do that can be really good for their postural development?
Cool. Well, this question I love, and I love anything about movement because that is definitely my background. And
Hmm.
I think there are going to be differing expertises and recommendations on all sides. I'm gonna be the one that errs on the side of less caution, honestly.
Hmm.
I'm like the more kids play, the better, and kids should be encouraged to explore what their interests are in a physical way. And again, I'm speaking directly to the current the current narrative that's kind of going around and what we're seeing with devices and the way that children's dopamine systems are being hijacked by their devices and that they're
Yeah,
not pulled to play. I mean, I spent a lot of time outside when I was younger and you couldn't get me inside at all because there wasn't anything inside that was interesting.
sure.
You could not get me inside when I was younger, right? But today there's a lot of interesting stuff inside on screens. And how is that just inherently limiting our ability to go play and build curiosity and climb trees and throw balls and play catch? And so having children be involved in a number of activities where it really encourages play. And that doesn't necessarily mean 7 organized sports, right?
Yeah.
So, organized sports are very different dynamic as well. It's not the
Mhm.
same as encouraging free play and curiosity and movement. So, I get that question a lot from most of my clients who have children because as they're restoring their posture for themselves, they'll start having this, oh my gosh, well, I must have just overdid it playing soccer. I must have just overdid it because when I was younger, I did this. And I'm like, hold up. We're having the wrong conversation here because I don't want to take away gymnastics from kids. I don't want to take things away from children and say, well, just because this person at this age ended up, with this kind of injury or posture dysfunction, I'm not blaming the sports per se. I'm blaming, again, the entire holistic environment that's surrounding it, because going and doing 3 hours of gymnastics and then coming home and sitting on a screen for another 4 hours is a whole different conversation, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that child in a different environment could do that same sport without this additional, let's say, signaling that's happening, because we're going back to what is our posture developing from? It's our daily habits. It's our daily signaling. And what kind of signaling are we receiving? So I think a lot of parents are doing a really great job because they've heard that messaging where they're telling most folks nowadays to not pressure children to specialize in a sport, for example. Like
Hmm.
playing only baseball all year round, not a great idea. Being a multi-sport athlete, always a great idea. Some of the greatest athletes have those kind of backgrounds where they've been multi-sport athletes.
Yeah.
What that doesn't include, though, is the nuanced conversation of guarantee those athletes also had summers at the lake or hiking and forest, going off into the forest, and did they have at-home sit-downs? Maybe there was 4 or 5 kids at home, who knows? Those are the little details that, to me, are much more important than just looking at their organized sport activities. So,
Hmm.
encouraging parents, again, to be thoughtful and understanding that we are adapting all the time,
Yeah.
not just during organized sport or playtime, not just during sitting at school. We're adapting all day, 24/7, and really kind of looking at a year or a season and thinking about the year seasonally, the way that nature intends it as well. Like, are we wintering? Are we
Yeah.
allowing our children to have a winter? What does that look like? Are we allowing children to have a summer, a spring? And what does that energetically feel like? Is there more cold time in the winter, but it looks like snowball fights? Or does it look like organized sports in the winter that are exactly the same as in the summer?
Right.
So well-rounded movement is a lot more play and a lot more, I guess, curiosity, and still offer that. My upbringing had a lot less screen time, but developmentally, I still ended up with postural issues.
Hmm.
So going back to that conversation of, it's always a yes and.
Right.
So teeth, I was, like I said, I have photos of me W sitting at 9, 10 years old. So my development led there. And I still have been able to adapt into a much more athletic and out of pain person that I wasn't before. And that's an
Yeah.
amazing thing. So hopefully I'm conveying that message that
Yeah.
I may have had an idyllic screenless upbringing, and yet I still developed postural issues because of my dental development. Could we have intervened? Who knows? Probably not in a good way. And would that intervention have led to a different outcome for me that was better or worse? Who knows? But I still love to talk about how movement develops not just posture, it develops our expression of ourselves. And
Yeah.
so that playtime, that free time, and the respect that we give changing seasons
Yeah.
leads to kind of my philosophy on movement and posture. Because if my posture is reflective of many seasons of depression or many seasons of anxiety, it's obvious.
Yeah.
And
Of
it's not going to
course.
be one thing that helps that posture change. It's not going to be, you know, just pulling my shoulder blades back
Yeah.
with a bra. I don't
Or
know why I'm on
or
that. I just
broom.
saw a recent, yeah, or broom, bra or broom.
There's so many, like, I feel like devices we're bombarded with, especially in the social media age, like, "Fix this, fix that, this is exactly what you need," and it could be a bra, it could be a mouth device that is correcting your sipping from a cup, that is going to correct your tongue posture, and so many different things to consider. But going kind of, like, back to what you said, but a lot of it is about just taking a step back and going back to this like natural way of living and living seasonally and going outside and getting, light exposure during the day. Just really taking it back to the basics can make such a big difference in our lives and our health and our posture and in our mood and our eating. I feel like stripping everything away is so important sometimes, and just going with the basics. It makes such a big difference. You know, these days when your child refuses everything you make and you just want them to have something nourishing, that's when I grab Signals. It's a real food meal replacement shake made with organ meats, minerals, and nutrients that support kids' biology, not just fill them up. It's rich in iron, zinc, and B vitamins, the building blocks for growth, focus, and strong immune systems. And it's great for the gut. And the best part? Nate calls it his ice cream shake. That's how delicious it is. And as a mom, it feels amazing to know he's getting what his body truly needs without the fight. You can learn more at feedyoursignals.com, and don't forget to use Lena10 at checkout for 10% off your purchase.
The building blocks. If the building blocks aren't there, all the tools will really not lead to filling that cup back up. But then when the building blocks are there, then absolutely these tools and these amazing ways that I'm so grateful for the postural restoration that introduced me to can be life-changing. And they are tools. They are tools and they help our body adapt to a new environment.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to talk about those tools. I think you
Yeah,
meant to ask me about shoes.
please.
I know that's a hot topic, shoes. And as we talk
Yes.
about feet and all of these things, this is where, again, I love having folks ask different questions about shoes because when you start to have this conversation, well, this is bad for our feet. And I go, well, what's a foot? Does your foot know it's a foot? Did we call it a foot? Did we name it a foot? Of course, we have to talk about it this way, but it's all connected. And so the shoes are not really for my foot, they're for my brain. And what is my brain sensing? And what is this new environment? So even barefoot shoes, quote unquote, are still shoes. They're just
Mm-hmm.
minimalist shoes. You're either barefoot or you're in a shoe. There's no such thing as a barefoot shoe. It's a minimalist shoe because being barefoot is barefoot and being in a shoe is a shoe. And there's a certain, friction that's happening and there's physics that's going on that your brain is then sensing and aware of. And so I get asked a lot about choose. And I don't ever want to prescribe a certain way of living because it might be, again, seasonal. I was in minimalist shoes for a good 5 years, and you would have pried those out of my hands. You couldn't have because I was a yoga teacher and I was barefoot all the time and I grew up barefoot.
Mm-hmm.
However, I grew up barefoot on flat ground. I didn't grow up in Poland where we'd be in the mountains or in the forest, and there'd be variety of textures and sensations underneath the ground that would provide different sense to my brain, to my developing body. And so you could argue that some of my developmental things came from my teeth as well as from the environment that I grew up in. So
Yeah.
had I had the same dental development and grew up in an environment where I was barefoot all the time on sand and rock and all of those things, would I have evolved differently? No doubt, but I didn't. And so today, the Postural Restoration Institute, when I work with someone, I might have to use and choose a shoe that helps to create a different alignment. There might even be an orthotic, which is just a tool. You could call a splint a dental guard or a device in the mouth. You can call that a mouth orthotic. It's all helpful for helping align the body. And that doesn't mean you wear it forever.
Yeah.
That also doesn't mean that you don't progress out of it. But I always encourage folks to be wary of marketing and how simple it is that we get marketed messages about health and nature. Being barefoot is not necessarily more natural when your
Yeah.
surface is constantly flat.
Right.
So, and what does that mean going barefoot at 40 years old on flat ground,
Yeah.
depending on where your baseline is? It'll, of course, change you. So there are certain shoes that we use. If I am consulting with someone who wants a little bit of help with a child's shoe, there's a brand, my colleague Lauren Shelton, that I work with. Um, for her daughter, she found a shoe called Merrell brand, Merrell, that worked wonders for her daughter and how she was starting to become very knock-kneed and was tripping and struggling. And the Postural Restoration Institute has a a number of videos as well as a list of shoes and describes the criteria to look for appropriate shoes. Because again, shoes can be a tool that allows the body to adapt and be able to continue to have variability on flat ground.
So essentially what you're saying is that if you live in an area where you have access to different types of grounds where you can be out where you can be in the forest and you have different maybe grass and you're not only on flat terrain, barefoot shoes are okay. But if you're in the city and you're constantly walking on a sidewalk, like you need to support the foot, right? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, and I love people will be like, "Well, why would my foot need support?" And I was like, "Well, don't call it support. Call it arch information.
Yeah.
Call it call it information. What you call something changes how you develop it. If in an ideal world I could develop a shoe that was perfect and it was a wide toe box and it had a good heel counter, I'm going to just pick up my shoe at this point.
Hmm.
Something that has a decent heel cup and it doesn't bend too much at the midfoot. Something like this for me, and I'm jumping into my restoration, someone who ended up with pelvic floor dysfunction and a very dysfunctional pelvis without even having children. This shoe has been a game changer for me to rebalance and restore my body.
Yeah.
I'm also very barefoot, often on natural
Natural
surfaces
surfaces. Yeah.
because I'm a big grounding, I want the earth's energy. I want to ground. However, we have to be realistic with what are we actually doing and how much time are we actually spending. So folks will want to debate that barefoot and these minimalist shoes on flat ground, oh, it's so much better because I'm going for a hike today. I'm like, yeah, but if you took a percentage and 80% of your day is minimalist shoe on flat ground, that's your environment.
Yeah.
What information are you missing? You're missing arch information. You're missing wobble. You're missing these challenge of an invariable ground. You cannot misinterpret that because the ground is flat and we are not symmetrical. We are
Yeah.
designed to walk on perfectly flat ground.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that we can't adapt to it though.
Yeah.
So I tell folks like, you're adapting to whatever you're doing. We don't have to add a good, bad, whatever to it. You can adapt to barefoot minimalist shoe for 3 months and then decide to adapt into something different. So timing, how much time you spent, it all works. And
Yeah.
so I don't have the Institute and the videos that are out there much more eloquent in describing what are the criteria, what are we basing our knowledge base on. I'm just a former constantly barefoot hippie who now wears a shoe because this makes me more athletic. I can salsa dance. I can sprint. I no longer have pelvic floor dysfunction. Like the benefits outweigh the marketing that makes me feel bad about wearing a shoe.
And what shoe is this? What brand is that?
This is a New Balance. This is a New Balance. So again, the challenge, the inevitable challenge that we have to talk about is that shoe companies are going to change their shoe all the time. So every year and a half or every twice a year, I believe, the Postural Restoration Institute, the physical therapist there will assess a certain number of shoes and they'll say this one or not this one. And they try to give as much help and guidance as they can, but
Yeah.
we're at the mercy of the manufacturers, and sometimes there might be a shoe variation that works perfectly, and then the next one is no good.
Yeah.
They've decided to change things, or they've added
Yeah.
too much padding, or it's too flimsy, or something is off with it. So a
Hmm.
reminder that things are not perfect, but when you have this bigger framework of like, oh, okay, well, I can wear this shoe and I can be barefoot on sand more often. But we have to be realistic that most people do not live in environments
Yeah. Yeah.
that are not majority percentage flat ground,
Yeah.
which for some individuals, let's just hypothetically put that out there. You have a great occlusion, you have a great airway, you came out of the womb perfectly untorsioned. There's nothing else that that is coming up for you, you might be completely fine. There's going to be plenty of people who can be barefoot on flat ground without significant issues.
Hmm.
That, in my experience, as someone who helps folks unravel and untwist, is not my experience for the majority of
Yeah.
people who are struggling.
Yeah.
And so it goes back to it all depends. If you're fine and you're great and you're doing what you want, well, then you're probably not also not listening to this podcast.
Yeah. That's a very good point. And this makes me think of my own son because I didn't know this information until maybe like a year ago. So I believed, white toe box barefoot shoes were the best. So that's what he wore for the majority of once he started wearing shoes. He was barefoot for, majority of the time before he started walking. But even when he was walking at the beginning, I tried to keep him barefoot, which in hindsight maybe wasn't the best thing. But he wore that shoe for forever, and he was always a type of child who was very cautious, and his physical milestones were a little bit delayed.
Mm.
And he would be kind of uneven, and he was running, like he was tripping, and I don't know. And then in hindsight, maybe if he had worn a better shoe, maybe his physical milestones would have been developed a little bit faster or better, whatever that word
Yeah.
means. But I wonder, in hindsight, this information is very important.
Yeah, and we don't know, and we won't always know, but I do love having this information to suggest that it's just a different curious conversation of, again, calling it something different, right? Like, it's just the shoe becomes a new environment. So when you have flat ground, that's all you have. That's the environment. When you have a shoe that has some give and it creates a different, and now the foot is moving through its range of motion, and there's arch information, there's pronation, supination, like things are happening. That leads to very different things happening up the chain.
Mhm.
Feet are supposed to be feelers. There are feelers. So if they're feeling the same thing every day, all the time, we are missing things. So one of my colleagues, Deanna Elliott, works a lot with moms postpartum and during pregnancy as well. She'll post some of the sensory mats that she's created for her kids at home. So they're on, some kind of rock pad, or there's something that has a little bit of a squish here and a little bit of this there. So barefoot inside is totally fine, but having a tool like that can be super supportive to, yeah, it might be unrealistic to let your child out into the grass or into a random park, if you live in the city, you might feel that
Mhm.
that's unrealistic, and we absolutely need to respect that it might be unrealistic for kids to be barefoot in the city or, in places where you're worried about glass or you're worried about other things, and these are the kind of simple solutions that I love a lot of my colleagues kind of design in their own families because they have this knowledge. They have this postural restoration framework of sensory information. So they'll come up with these little kind of fun ways to have, and they're good for us too as adults, right? Like,
Yeah.
you might know what it feels like to kind of walk along some like very shaggy carpet versus like a fresh cut lawn. What does that do for our body? How do we feel when that happens?
Yeah.
So knowing that cold, hard rock, concrete, very, very single, unvariable surface,
Mhm.
what are we missing in our brain when we don't feel all that other gushy kind of fun stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. Mm. And when we have this exposure to all these different sensory experiences and different sensory environments, I think it supports the development from this whole child lens a little bit as well. So I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, what are some simple things parents can do besides like, having this naturalistic exposure for kids or maybe this like nature inspired exposure for kids when if it's not possible when the kids are busy and things are happening, what are some things parents can encourage at home so that kids have this opportunity to develop in this more naturalistic way?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think going back to, I have so many examples from my colleagues in ways that they,
Mhm.
incorporate balloons, because a lot of the Postural Restoration Institute main tenet is about the diaphragm and respiration, and balloons and games where you're making sounds and you're using your vocal cords, and percussive games, right? Playing music. dancing to the rhythm. These are all natural ways that help support and maintain our rhythms because we are so dynamic. And Ron Huska will say that Postural Restoration Institute is just about walking and breathing. And when you start to unlayer that, you're like, yeah, that's kind of all it is. Because if we are walking and breathing, or sorry, the full sentence I should have said was walking and talking with a friend. That's the PRA Institute. Walk and talk with a friend, because you are expressing, you are vocalizing. So for kids, going back to, again, some of the things that I see with some parents that have requested my help, the question is always, did you have a conversation at the table? Did you have a conversation with your kid? Are you dancing? Are you shouting? Are you expressing? Are you playing, creating these kind of fun tools and games inside that if you're not going to be out in the forest, of course, people are going and taking trips and stuff, but like on a day-to-day, is there enough of that expression inside? Or does it turn into a really quiet house because everyone's on their devices?
Yeah.
And
Very good
that's
point.
just a very different thing.
Yeah.
So quiet is great and also scary.
Yeah, it
You
really
walk
is.
you walk into a room and you're like, it's very quiet, but there's 3 kids here?
Yeah.
I don't know. Something's going on. So
Yeah.
either something good's happening or something bad.
For sure. Oh, yes. Yes. They might be very creative or they might be on their device. But
Yeah, I don't know if
yeah,
that's helpful.
it's very helpful. And it all goes back to what we said at the beginning, that connection piece. And once you get back to that connection piece, I believe like when you start to connect with your child and you start to look at it from this like more naturalistic lens, magic can happen. So one more question I wanted to ask you. Let's talk about pelvic floor health because I think that's very much misunderstood. And for women who have had kids, and moms are mostly our listeners here, I assume, what are some things they can do to support their pelvic floor health after having babies?
Yeah, yeah. I love that question. I have to plug, I guess, the tool and the support that I have to offer for that is that I work with my colleague Lauren Shelton, who just had her second. She's a physical
Congratulations.
therapist. Yeah, she's a physical therapist. And we partnered together because I teach rebalancing classes, which are, I would call my version of offering postural restoration to the masses. It is much better as a modality one-on-one. So I have to acknowledge that one-on-one, it's a lot easier to progress and to be able to spot treat and to really connect wherever that person is in their baseline with their provider. But I realized that there's a gap there's not that many of us, right, who offer this service. And I wanted to have a way that people can
Yeah.
come and join like a class format. And so I joined with Lauren, who's a physical therapist, and she's been teaching fitness classes with the PRI framework for a long time as well. And we work with moms at home to help them rebalance from the inside out, their pelvic floors, whether it's pre-pregnancy, post-pregnancy, during pregnancy. She was doing classes, teaching classes up until the last like 3 days or so. And she'll share her story at some point, I'm sure, as well. But her pregnancy went much better the second round, thanks to the work that she's been able to do, understanding the postural restoration concepts. So I
Mm.
offer that because are so many services for women, pelvic floor therapy, exercises. There's going to be that messaging coming from all modalities. So I want to distinguish some of them a little bit because I myself as a former yoga teacher, there are a lot of missing components. If someone's putting out a yoga pelvic floor rebalancing or restoration program, I'm not going to trust it. I'm not going to trust it because a lot of yoga, a lot of different modalities can often be lacking the foundational underpinnings of the neurology and physiology of the body. So in many ways, the Postural Restoration Institute is coming at it from a proper framework. That doesn't mean that those things won't change, that they haven't helped. Plenty of people have found great solutions from those type of support. I just want more people to know about the Postural Restoration Institute because became a yoga teacher. I did Pilates. I did all of these other things, and I couldn't help my pelvic floor
Yeah.
because I was lacking a lot of the basic tenets, understanding of the neurological aspects of these postural issues and these pressure issues, these sensory issues that I was having that led me to the right holistic solution in order to be able to realign my body. So pelvic floor physical therapy can be amazing, and it might still not be enough.
Yeah.
Pelvic floor, like internal rehab, etc. But in this way, kind of like we spoke before, where I'm like, I'm a lot more, I'm not as conservative. I say, I want women to get to weight bearing. I want them to get to strength training. I want them to be able to do that and not be told, hey, you need to rest for X amount of times. Like your kid is growing. What do you mean? Like you're picking up your kid and all of these things and allowing for variation, right? Some women are going to need extra support in this domain. And that's where I think the industry has evolved so much that there are so many ways for a woman to support herself. And I'd point to all my colleagues, my postural restoration colleagues who have this framework and this foundation so that they can provide like really great baseline introduction to restoring pressure and movement. And in general, just supporting women, supporting each other, because one woman might have a journey where she can get right back into her exercise routine the next day or the next week or two. And another woman might not. She might need to do some more of this rebalancing that postural restoration offers, which is positional breath work, a little bit more corrective looking, but it can still just be as fast and can lead to coming out the other side stronger, more confident, and not stuck with a lot of what I find so often are things that people just normalize, right? We normalize incontinence, we normalize pain, we normalize, especially for women, that these things are just normal and they're common, but they're not normal.
Yeah.
So they can be common, but no one has to live with them. Hopefully that provided a little guidance in that I
Yeah.
just love pointing women to resources that will work for them. So whether it's following an in-home program like ours or working with a provider or working with another trainer that is certified, because otherwise the same things that we kind of talked about for the kids apply too. It's
Yeah.
better footwear, maybe before pregnancy, a woman might be wearing those minimalist shoes and eventually she will do better with one of these as she restores and rebalances. Because that's a lot of changes, a lot of pressure changes and growth.
I think that's so helpful. I think like your overall explanation of what posture is and how to pay attention to your body when it comes to your child's health and yours. I think you explained it beautifully. Just looking at adaptation, how you can change your environment and be more conscious about it in order to support the right type of environment for your body to maybe shift a little bit and develop a little bit differently, and how you can support it in pregnancy and after birth. There are just so many things you can do so that your body can shift without having to necessarily do specific movements or specific, I don't know, therapies. Because there's so much you can do to shift your environment to, you know, aid yourself
Adapt.
and that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Adapt and
And I think that's
heal.
what it's about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely want to include underneath this in our session notes, like I want to include a link to the shoe list. Is this shoe New Balance on the newest clinic? No?
No, this will be an old one. This will be an old one. I have some older shoes that aren't in circulation anymore that you can't necessarily purchase. But so there
Okay.
will be others. There will be others. But this one, maybe another model of this might be, but this one's an old shoe. So
It looks so white. So it was new. I was like, oh, okay. At least on video.
it looks it does kind of
It
look
looks
really
good.
white. This is a shoe I definitely use inside and when I'm teaching and
Oh, well, there you go.
coaching. So it's definitely a clean shoe for sure.
Yeah.
But the shoe list and probably like adding a link to the video explanation is also super helpful. And there's many out there, um, and just linking to any. I'd love to link to our offering as well as the Find a
Yeah.
Provider page and other things that people can have just some quick resources too. Because my biggest goal is just that people feel like they have something that's supportive versus creating fear around the corrective environment that we kind of exist in today, where I don't know, do you have pain? How bad is your problem? And
Yeah.
do you have faith that it can resolve itself? Maybe over time, maybe with just a little bit of an environment shift. Like a good shoe can change a lot of people's lives, and they won't believe it because they'll believe that it's unnatural. They'll believe that because the marketing now says that shoes are not natural and they're not good for you. It's hard because for
Yeah.
one person, it might mean a whole host of difference where they don't need to do all this other stuff, this other additional stretching and whatnot that isn't giving them the best return on investment because it's a sensory conversation. It's not a muscle bone, like you're just not stretching enough conversation. If you're
Yeah.
moving and you're grooving, you're doing all these things, you're living life, then those things come easy. There might be some
Yeah.
correction to get there, to get back there where you can do less. But that framework, I think, is not often clear for a lot
Yeah.
of us in our lives where we're told, oh, there's going to be this next tool that you need to buy. You just don't know about it yet.
Essentially, everything you need already exists, right?
I
Could I
think
say
so.
that? Okay. I think so too. So if you could share just one piece of advice with parents who want to raise healthier, more resilient kids in today's world, what would it be?
Play more, wrestle more, have more hugs, and laugh a lot.
Yeah, so good. Yes. So for anybody who wanted to work with you or wanted to learn more about you, where can they find you online?
Oh, amazing. My Instagram, Kasia Galica or Galica in the Polish way, as well as loa.movement or loamovement.com.
Amazing. And I signed up for Low Movement and I'm loving it so far. So definitely recommend it to everybody.
We love having you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. This was an amazing conversation, and I'm excited for everybody to listen and to start to adapt a little bit.
Same. I hope it fits in the context of kind of how you talk about things and what you really want for people to learn. So I'm hoping that was enough because there's always, like my colleague Alina, for sure, if she was on here, she would be listing all the tools, all the mouth guards, all the different,
Yeah,
specializations and people to reach out to, which is
yeah.
also
We have to
tremendously
get her
helpful. It's
on.
just, yeah, it's a different message for sure. It's a different message. And I think as long as some people have some introduction to it, then they
Yeah,
can explore it the way that they want. But mine is
definitely.
always a little bit less of a, let's not be afraid of it so much, I guess.
Thanks so much for listening to the Livin'Sky podcast. If this episode resonated, please leave a quick 5-star review or share it with another parent who'd love it too. It really helps more families find the support that they need. And don't forget to join my newsletter at linalivin'Sky.com for more tips and free guides. Sending a little sunshine to your kitchen today. See you next time.